It's kind of funny how a single day on the calendar, February 2nd, can tie together the fates of some of history's most brilliant mathematicians. Their stories are this wild mix of genius, terrible luck, and timeless truths that make you stop and ask, what does it really mean to be remembered?
I mean, think about it. What makes a genius unforgettable? Is it just about having a brilliant idea? Or is it more about having that idea at the perfect time? What's the difference between a household name and a mind that's just lost to history? Well, today we're going to try and figure that out. Okay, so here are the mathematicians we're talking about, all linked by that one date. On one side, we've got Charles Marais. And hey, don't worry if you've never heard of him. That's kind of the point. And on the other side, we've got Christopher Clavius, Jacques Binet, and the philosopher Bertrand Russell. These are figures whose work definitely made its mark. Their totally different stories are what this is all about.
All right, let's kick things off with our unsung hero, Charles Marais. This was a French mathematician with an idea that should have changed everything. But his story, man, it's the perfect example of how being a genius just isn't always enough. Sometimes it all comes down to timing. Yeah, this quote from the MacTutor History of Mathematics archive just says it all, doesn't it? Mary had the genius, for sure, but the world just wasn't ready to see it. So what was this incredible work that should have made him famous? Well, he was tackling a really tricky concept, irrational numbers. Numbers like pi or the square root of 2, the ones where the decimal just goes on and on forever, never repeating. Before Marais, mathematicians kind of had a shaky grasp on them. He was the first person to create a solid, rigorous, logical foundation for how they work.
And this is where the terrible timing kicks in. Check this out. Marais publishes his big idea in 1869. Groundbreaking stuff. But then, just 3 years later, another mathematician, George Cantor, publishes his own paper on the exact same topic. And, for whatever reason, Cantor's version just exploded. It completely transformed the field. Meanwhile, Mary's work? Pretty much forgotten. All because of a 3-year difference. Crazy, right? Okay, so that's a story about being forgotten. Now let's flip the script completely and look at someone whose impact was, well, monumental. Let's talk about Christopher Clavius. He was an astronomer who died way back on February 2nd, 1612. So what does it take for your work to actually change the world? I mean, for Marais, timing was his worst enemy. But for Clavius, timing was his greatest ally. He had exactly the right skills when the world had a huge, practical problem that needed solving, and needed it fast. And that problem? It was the calendar itself. You see, Clavius was the main brain behind the Gregorian calendar. Yep, the one we all use today. Pope Gregory XIII basically came to him and said, hey, our calendar is a mess, it's drifting away from the seasons, fix it. And his solution was honestly pretty bold. First step, he just deleted 10 days. Seriously. In 1582, the day after October 4th was suddenly October 15th, just like that. Then, for the second step, he came up with a much smarter rule for leap years to make sure the calendar wouldn't drift off course ever again. And get this, his system is so good, it'll take about 3,500 years for it to be off by even one single day. Now that is a legacy. Totally different from Marais, right? Clavius's work had an instant, massive, and unforgettable impact on pretty much everyone on the planet. But legacy isn't always so black and white. Sometimes figuring out who gets the credit, well, it gets messy. Which brings us to our next guy, Jacques Binet, who was born on February 2nd, 1786. His story really makes you wonder, who actually deserves the credit when something is discovered? So Binet is known for a really cool formula that has to do with the Fibonacci sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and it just keeps going. His formula is basically this amazing shortcut. It lets you find, say, the 100th number in the sequence without having to figure out all 99 numbers before it. Pretty incredible stuff. Except there's a catch. That formula that's named after him, Binet's formula, yeah, he didn't discover it first. Not even close. Turns out, a mathematician named Abraham de Moivre found the exact same formula way back in 1718. That's more than 100 years earlier. But we all call it Binet's formula. Binet gets his name on it, while de Moivre is basically a trivia question. It just goes to show you, legacy isn't always about being the first one there. Sometimes it's about who popularizes an idea and stands on the shoulders of those who came before. So we've seen how timing, impact, and even just who gets the credit can shape a legacy. But what if the whole idea of a personal legacy in math is kind of flawed? Our last mathematician for the day offers a totally different way to think about all this.
Let's talk about Bertrand Russell. He was this incredible philosopher and logician, and he died on, you guessed it, February 2nd, 1970, bringing us full circle. And his take on what mathematicians do is, well, it's really humbling.
See, Russell's big idea was that math isn't something we invent, it's something we discover. The truths are just out there, waiting for us. So guys like Mahay or Cantor or Binet, they weren't creating anything new. They were just the first people to see something that was already true. And when you think about it that way, fighting over who gets the credit seems a little silly, doesn't it? The real legacy isn't the person's name. The legacy is the truth itself. Because even in a world without any of these people, 1 + 1 would still equal 2. So it all comes down to this, really. What's the greater legacy? Is it changing the entire world with a practical application of math, like Clavius did with the calendar? Or is it revealing a deep, timeless truth about how the universe works, even if nobody ever knows your name, like Mary? It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. Something to think about.